Hey, Rook! I'm totally digging the contrast between the slow, lumbering zombies and this glowing neon firepower we get to use. It really creates a cool flow of movement and strategy. What do you think the most potent upgrade combination would be for surviving those later waves?
Nova, focusing on single powerhouse perks is a mistake. Maximum survival relies on synergy. I would prioritize damage output paired with fire rate and maybe some movement speed. If you over-index on only one, you'll get swarmed regardless. How do you expect to handle the horde when they eventually speed up?
That's a fair point, Rook. Synergy is key. But what if there's an explosive combo lurking in those random upgrades that could completely change the game? Like, what if you got piercing rounds and massive damage increases? Could that make tactical positioning almost irrelevant for a bit?
Nova, focusing on a rare combo ignores the reality of random choices. Even if you got piercing, relying on that means you aren't boosting fire rate or speed, leaving you exposed elsewhere. Tactical positioning is never irrelevant. It's the constant variable against the growing horde. Are you suggesting players should just gamble on the perfect upgrade path?
Not at all, Rook. Think of it as adapting to the opportunities the game offers. What if a lucky fire rate boost comes up early? You pivot to maximize that, right? Isn't that strategic flexibility more effective than forcing a predefined plan?
Nova, adapting is necessary, but prioritizing pure fire rate without adding damage will make your bullets feel ineffective later. You'll just be shooting faster into a wall of health. How do you propose balancing that flexibility against the undeniable need for sustained power?
Hey, Rook, that's where movement comes in. With pure fire rate, you can push through gaps more easily. What if that fire rate builds crazy momentum for faster takedowns, letting you gather XP so quickly that you naturally start picking up the damage upgrades you need later on anyway? Isn't that the ultimate proactive survival?
Nova relies on too many what-ifs. You assume that faster fire rate naturally drops more XP, but that's not a guarantee in the code. If you neglect damage, you'll be kiting a massive, growing horde forever, inevitably cornering yourself. How do you justify that low damage period when the zombies start presenting more resistance?
Rook, that's fair. We can't just assume the drops. But what if the sheer volume of fire pushes the horde back momentarily, giving you that little bit of breathing room to strategically reposition? Isn't that brief pause a tactical win against the slow zombies?
Nova, the code doesn't include knockback mechanics, so volume alone won't push anything back. It only slows death time without sufficient damage. That breathing room is purely hypothetical, not a viable tactic. How do you plan to survive the later waves when the zombies become more resilient and your tactical options shrink?
Okay, Rook, I hear you on the code details. No knockback inherent. But what if we prioritize the movement speed upgrades first? That's in the game for sure. Couldn't that let you constantly kite them into tight bunches, making it easier to drop entire waves with a single powerful line of fire once you do get that damage boost? Wouldn't speed become our ultimate power?
Nova, relying on kiting also assumes a static horde. If you focus purely on speed, you're sacrificing firepower, making those tight bunches nearly impossible to actually dispatch before you're overwhelmed. Speed is defensive, it is not power. How do you propose dealing with the inevitable slow-moving tanks that appear later, regardless of how fast you move?
Rook, you're right about the tanks. They can't be ignored. But what if we look at movement speed as an offensive tool, letting us aggressively push past the main horde and get behind those big guys? What if that maneuverability gives us the angle to shred them from behind weaker zombies? Couldn't that make speed the key to unlocking effective damage?
Nova, that maneuver assumes endless space that isn't available. Aggressively pushing past the horde just puts you between two walls of zombies. It doesn't guarantee an angle. And those big guys are just as resilient from behind. How do you justify putting yourself in that predictably deadly pocket when simple tactical firing lines could deliver more consistent results?
Rook, you're thinking about the containment. Good point. But what if we look at that pocket as an opportunity? What if a quick burst of speed lets us weave in, drop a massive blast from a high-damage weapon, and escape before they close in? Could that turn an apparent trap into a devastating strike?
Nova, that maneuver relies on instantaneous burst damage that's not present in this game's weapon logic. You're holding spacebar for continuous fire, not dropping massive blasts. Trying to weave into that pocket is guaranteed death, not a viable tactic. At what point do you concede that relying on hypothetical burst damage is simply a distraction from building reliable, consistent power?
Hey, Rook, I see we're stuck on that specific burst idea, but what if that continuous fire gets superpowered by a fire rate boost? Couldn't that sustained laser beam let us melt those tanks from a safer distance while we zip around the arena? Wouldn't that play to existing mechanics and deliver a similar punch?
Nova, zipping around doesn't guarantee safety, and a superpowered fire rate still relies on your base damage. If that damage isn't upgraded, your laser beam will just tickle those tanks slightly faster, not melt them. You're still risking being swarmed eventually. Why resist the established need for a balanced approach instead of chasing another single-stat solution?
Rook, I hear ya. Balance is crucial. But what if the speed upgrades don't just make you move faster, but also increase how quickly you gather XP? If that speed boost lets you level up twice as fast, wouldn't you then get those critical damage upgrades way sooner to balance it out? Isn't that an accelerator that fuels everything else?
Nova, you're assuming a relationship that doesn't exist in the game mechanics. Movement speed doesn't directly increase XP gain. You must still kill zombies to get it. Neglecting damage at the start means you'll be killing zombies slower, actually decelerating your level ups. Are you prepared to accept that initial snail's pace growth just to chase that particular combination?
Rook, you're right. I shouldn't just assume the XP flow. But what if focusing on movement speed lets you survive the early waves longer, giving you more opportunities to get any level up choices? If that prolonged survival helps you consistently scale up over time, even if it's slower initially, isn't that better than risking dying fast without perfect damage?
Nova, prioritizing speed means you'll be running from slow zombies continuously. That prolongs survival only temporarily before their relentless numbers overwhelm you. Trading early lethality for movement speed increases long-term risk. How do you plan to survive the pressure when you lack the damage to clear space effectively?
Hey, Rook, that's a solid point about the pressure building up. But what if that speed means you can strategically funnel the horde into narrow choke points on the map, where even low-damage weapons can be super efficient against tightly packed enemies? Couldn't you essentially turn their sheer numbers into a weakness through clever positioning?
Nova, this map is an open arena. There are no narrow choke points to utilize. Funneling them by kiting just creates a denser cluster behind you, requiring even higher damage per shot to clear. How do you justify relying on terrain features that simply aren't present, rather than improving your weapon's core capabilities?
Rook, you're right to call me out on the open arena. My mistake. But what if we treat those tight bunches as one giant target? What if we use the speed to circle them continuously, compressing them tighter and tighter, and then just unleash a massive rapid-fire barrage that hits dozens at once? Couldn't that focus our damage where they're densest?
Nova, circling tightly increases your risk of collision. Without damage, that rapid-fire barrage won't kill anything fast enough, and the densest part of the crowd will eventually overwhelm you. How do you plan to escape the perimeter of that compressed horde if they expand before you can clear them?
Hey, Rook, that's a valid concern. We definitely don't want to get trapped. But what if that rapid-fire barrage is backed up by a movement speed boost? What if when they start expanding, we can just blast a quick path out and reposition across the arena? Couldn't that escape capability make the compression tactic safer?